Hi, welcome back to the sewing room. I'm Lara, and I hope you can't hear that. There's a little noise today because the city's working on the water on my street. So hopefully it's not too loud and everything's going to be okay. But today I want to talk to you about how everything else is going to be okay, because a lot of my beginning sewing students have this problem. It's super easy to fix, and basically when you're using a snap-on foot like this, it's easy to accidentally take it off and not know how to put it back on. So I'm going to show you how to put it back on, and then I'm also going to talk to you about the history of it, and if you want to use one of this style of foot with your vintage sewing machine, you can, and I'll tell you how. Snap-on style presser feet are very common with new machines, but you don't see them as much with vintage machines, and that's because they weren't around. As far as I can tell from looking at Google patents, it was definitely something that came around in the very early 80s. I found one from Singer in November of 1981, so maybe that's the first one, maybe it's not, but definitely started seeing them around then on machines, and now they're pretty much standard. Your first sign that you even have a snap-on foot is usually there's some sort of lever or bar on the back of the foot, which is what helps you take it off. So how that works is I have the machine set with the needle at the highest position. I'm going to raise the foot, and then if I hit this bar, either on purpose or by accident, the foot will come off. It'll come right off, and it always comes off at the moment when you really don't want it to. You cannot sew on a machine that does not have a presser foot, so now what do? Well, putting it back on is very easy. There is a little bar here, which I hope you can see, and basically you're going to line up that bar with this part of the foot. You can see a little tiny kind of bump in the foot there. You want to line those up as well as you're able, and then you lower the presser foot, and ideally it snaps the first time. Sometimes you discover you're a little bit off, so then you have to adjust. Sometimes I'll even kind of, there we go, and you know it's on when you lift the foot and the presser foot comes with you. Now, changing the foot on an older machine like the Singer 301 is not hard. It does take a few more seconds than the snap off, but basically there's almost always going to be a screw that you unscrew. And don't lose this. They're not irreplaceable, but sometimes they're fairly unique to that make and model. And then you can put on whatever foot you like. I'm just going to put my usual foot right back on, and basically you're lining up. There's a little hole right there, which you can see better if I take it off. There's a little hole right there, and you're lining up that hole with the kind of slot here. Now most feet do have this kind of slot system, and I think it's partly because if you don't want to unscrew the thing all the way and take it off, you can often get away with unscrewing it partly and then basically sliding the foot either on or off. Of course, now I won't be able to get it to work. Oh, there we go. And it just saves, those precious seconds when you're in the middle of sewing and you need to change to a zipper foot or something, to just loosen a little bit until it's basically able to wiggle off. And then you can wiggle it back on and screw it in. Now, this particular screw does not have any sort of way to use a screwdriver to tighten it, but I'll show you what that looks like on a different machine. If your machine is similar to my Touch and Sew, and a lot of machines are like this in this respect, sometimes there's a little slot, and that's meant for a screwdriver. Now, I'll admit, most of the time, I rely upon my own hand strength to get that tight enough. Now, for me, one of the joys and pleasures of randomly collecting random sewing machine stuff is that sometimes you find a box like this, or maybe you buy a box like this. And it's not even for a machine you have, but whatever. And you open it up. The biggest thing I've learned is that you can't expect everything in the whole box to actually go with the machine or even all together. So actually, here's an example here. This is what I was showing you at the beginning of the video, and this is a snap-on converter, basically an adapter that can be used on a sewing machine that wasn't designed for it, to be used as a snap-on with a snap-on foot, and that's great. But these two things don't go together I don't know how well you can see that. I'm going to try to show you as well as I am able. If you can see that, let me just zoom in here. Here we go. The space here is very, very narrow, and it would have to go onto this, which is much wider. So for these two to go together, they would have to go together, and unfortunately, they don't. This is for a very narrow ankle converter. Sometimes they're called ankles. I think primarily they were made for Singer machines. I thought I had one and I can't find it. But I'll find a photo online so you can see what it looks like. This is kind of more standard. And again, I don't know exactly which machine this fits. I would have to experiment. And I don't have an ankle for this one. So if I wanted to use this one, I would need to invest in that ankle. They're very inexpensive though. So if you do want to go this route, and you happen to have one of these guys where it's very narrow, that doesn't mean it's not usable, but just, do your research. And if you're buying, make sure that you are buying from a place that you can return if it doesn't happen to fit your machine. Here's an example of a foot I think that might fit this guy. Let's try it. Voila, it fits, hooray! Making sure that it actually snaps on, but also that it moves. What I like about this particular adapter is that this white area back here makes it much easier to thread the needle. Basically gives you a white field of vision behind the needle, so when you go to thread you can see better, which is really nice. So I do like the design of this adapter quite a lot. This is a zipper foot for this kind of adapter. This is a foot used a lot for hemming, or any time that you want to be able to sew a really exact distance from an edge. This is a good one. Obviously the one you're going to be using the most, as I'm digging around in my box of feet, is going to be kind of a standard foot. This is a 1/4 inch foot that's used a lot by quilters or anyone else who wants a 1/4 inch seam. There's a plethora of feet out there, and once you get into the snap game, then that's going to kind of open up your horizons for you if you want to collect non-vintage feet for your vintage machine.